Thank you for coming this floor. In the rest of the presentation, this session, after the coffee break, we have several presentations about subclinical or clinical endometritis in dairy cows. But I'd like to talk about the endometrial environment in beef cows, which is Japanese black. And also in our system in Japan, we have early weaning, which weaned less than 10 days postpartum, or suckling until 2 or 3 or more than 3 months after calving. So our question that arose was what was the weaning, effect of weaning on postpartum endometrial environment in beef cows? So for the optimal beef production, calving, obviously, calving interval should be maintained 1 year, which means cows should get pregnant within 80 days postpartum. And if it is possible to attain this goal, it greatly depends on the resumption of ovarian function and uterine involution. So as you may know, the early weaning has some advantage as well as disadvantages. So for calves, there are low incidence of diarrhea or getting used to bottle feeding and higher uniformity in growth, better rumen development, and disadvantage space for bottle feeding, labor, and cost for feeding milk replacer. But for the dams, it improvement estrus detection rate, and there has been quite a few reports that the reproductive performance was better in early weaning cows, but they had no suckling stimulus. But so we wondered, so what was going on, the uterine involution? There are a lot of studies in such aspect, but inside, or in other words, endometrial conditions. So you see, oh, sorry. So suckling stimulus several times a day induce uterine contraction that leads to uterine involution. That we believe. And so early weaning, lack of suckling stimulus could affect or delay uterine involution or not, because suckling stimulus promotes oxytocin secretion from the pituitary gland and posterior pituitary gland, and the secretion of oxytocin leads to the secretion of PGF2 alpha from the endometrium, so that the uterine contraction should be stimulated. So, to monitor the uterine involution, there are several methods or means. Histology using biopsy, for example, it is quite objective, but it is very invasive into the tissue, and it's not convenient. It takes time and labor, and so it's not applicable many cases in the field conditions. On the other hand, rectal palpation or ultrasonography is very convenient and no invasion for most of the time, but the objectivity is not so optimal. Cytology, recently we have obtained this tool in not only dairy cows but also beef cows. It's much less invasive and convenient compared with much more convenient compared with biopsy, and the objectivity is maintained at a certain level high. So, as you may know, many of you in the floor, so we collect the endometrial samples from uterine body using the sight brush. We developed this one in our situation, so-called metal brush, and polymorphological neutrophils in the all nucleated cells in the endometrium, and calculated as a percentage of all nucleated cells observed under the microscope. So, as to the effect of the early weaning on postpartum uterine involution, there has controversial discussion because some research groups say uterine involution is not delayed because of the weaning, because size of uterine horns, incidence of endometriosis was no difference between the suckling cows and the weaning cows. But other groups says inflammation response, phagocytes, lymphocytes are higher, and the uterine glands function lowered in weaning. So uterine involution is delayed. So there still remains unknown or unclear. In one of the postgraduate graduates several years ago had a preliminary study that early weaning farm versus suckling farm to compare the endometrial PM% were lower in early weaning farms. So is the uterus involution rather accelerated in early weaned cows? That was against our hypothesis. So we are a bit confused, but so we followed up study to clarify the effect of early weaning on postpartum endometrial environment in beef cows within the same farm and among several different farms. So at farm A, we divided into two groups. One group is a weaning group for maintenance of the dumped body. Hay ad libium was head, plus mixed feeding were head 2 kilograms per day. In the contrast, suckling group, in addition to the maintenance, they are lactating so that to compensate the energy used for the lactation, the mixture were added. So in total, 4 kilograms per day. So this is a nutrient sufficiency rate in the animals in the several farms we used. In farm A, so, and in different farms, as to dry matter and TDN were about the same, and CP was about the same. Only this farm are not sufficient, but usually the difference was not so much. Let's see the first result between the two groups in the same farm. So in weaning group, or WG, and suckling group, SG, from 2 to 6 weeks postpartum, using endometrial cytology and blood biochemical analysis. And also, we compared the PM% and blood chemical analysis between the same farms, using farm A, B, C, and D, from 3 and at 3 and 5 weeks postpartum, using cytology, ultrasonography, and blood chemical analysis. Also, we monitored the morphology of the uterine involution by ultrasonography using these devices with a linear probe. So both of them are 10 megahertz linear probe, which is good enough to monitor the uterine involution morphologically by ultrasonography. Blood chemical examination. we analyzed non-esterified fatty acid, or NEFA, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, BHBA, albumin, BUN, total cholesterol, and total protein. So this is the first result we got among the different farms. So PM% at week 3 and week 5 between the two groups. So both week 3 and week 5, PM% in suckling groups was higher than the weaning groups. And also proportion of the cows that had corpus luteum by week 5 was higher in weaning group than in suckling group. As to the blood chemical analysis, we show only NEFA and BHB because other parameters had no difference between the groups. So NEFA, also NEFA and BHBA, SG group had higher than WG group. And in the same farm, within the same farm, so from week 2 to week 6, there are differences, particularly week 4 and week 5, significantly higher in SG than WG. This was a difference. And NEFA also, from week 3 to week 6, there was a significant difference, and they tended to higher also at week 2. So NEFA concentration were higher in SG than WG. So VHBA is also all the time sampling point. The value was the VHBA value were higher in SG than WG. So we have concluded that the early weaned cows had less endometrial PM% than that in suckled cows during early postpartum period. And nutritious status that resulted from energy consumption and fat mobilization by suckling, although we we added some feeding, mixed feeding to this to suckling group, may be involved. So the energy balance, a subtle deficient of nutrient may be involved in the delay, not only the resumption of ovarian cyclicity, but also restoration of the endometrium in the process of uterine involution. Okay, thank you for your attention.